subject this morning is the dream nature of the world. Sometimes when we have to pass through experiences in this world, it seems far from a dream. It seems very real. I'm happy to see you, Mr. Brown, here today. He had a very trying experience last night, and by the grace of God, he's here this morning. And although we have to go through these things, nevertheless, it is a dream. But behind that is God's great protection. And we must always remember that sometimes we suffer and go through trying experiences still. If it were not for the grace of God, they might be a million times worse. And so we're thankful that you are here this morning, Mr. Brown. The dream nature of the world. The sages of India have spoken of the universe as a dream of God, which it is, and a materialization of his thought. In Genesis, the first chapter, we read, God created heaven and earth, and they were without form and void. Therefore, they were created first in the thought of God. And then God created light, and from that light he has projected this universe of light and shadow. And so there we have corroboration in the ancient teachings of India and also in the words of our scripture. Now, man, when he dreams every night, he creates things. He creates the universe. He can see old friends, things that have happened perhaps years ago, and sometimes they are real and tangible just as much as this universe here. And so as man can do that, so God has created this universe from his one eternal substance or consciousness. There's only one substance, but this seemingly hard and solid world is nothing but vibrating consciousness of God or vibrating light atoms. It's hard to realize that, but in your meditation you can prove it if you will try. And so, from this consciousness of God, through the agency of light, just like in the motion picture, God has created this universe upon universe upon universe. And remember, there is only one substance in all creation, and that's God's eternal consciousness. One eternal substance. Remember your dream. In your dream you can do it. From your one consciousness and the light of that consciousness, you can project the dream, and in that dream you can live and relive many things. There is only one substance there, and that's your consciousness. So it is with God. From Master's autobiography, one reference which will help you to understand what I've just said, perhaps. The whole cosmos is a materialized thought of the Creator, says the Master. This heavy, earthly clod floating in space is a dream of God. He made all things out of his consciousness, even as man, in his dream consciousness, reproduces and vivifies a creation with its creatures. God first created the earth as an idea, as I have spoken, and then he quickened the atom, so to speak, and gave life to that idea. And these atoms and molecules are held together by what? By the will of God. The will of God has created this universe, has created each one of us and all things. And therefore, the Master says, when he withdraws his will, the earth again will disintegrate first into energy and finally will dissolve into consciousness. The earth idea will disappear from objectivity. And if you remember those words of the Master, it'll make it easier for you to understand how matter is changing. It never stays the same. It is resolving first into energy electromagnetic force, and finally into light. And when God withdraws the light into his consciousness. Now, under the influence of paradoxes and injustices of this world existence, or this mundane consciousness, it is not easy to treat it as a dream. But if we will remember our own state of consciousness, we dream. What is the matrix of that dream? Your own consciousness. You close your eyes now. If you can, lift your eyes to Christ Center, you will see light there. Now that's what you make your dreams from. If you can do it consciously, they'll be just the same as the unconscious dream. And there, if you can concentrate enough, you will feel and taste and smell and touch. So, that is what God does. Now, when we wake up from the dream, that's why we know it as unreality. When we stay in it, it's real, is it not? But when in the morning, or when we wake up and jump out of bed, then we realize we were dreaming. So, as God creates this creation from his thought by the projection of light, giving light and shadow, just like the moving picture on the screen, as he does that, when you or I wake up in God, in the cosmic consciousness of God, we will know it as a dream, not until. Now you can wake up in God's consciousness through meditation, right meditation. Because in that meditation you contact the Word of God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. You can contact the light of his presence, and in that you will wake up to the fact that this creation is a dream of God. But not until you do that. Just as you wake up from your own dream, so you can wake up from God's dream in his consciousness. Now your consciousness is the same as God's consciousness. There is no difference. The only difference is that you feel separated from that. That's all. Your consciousness is the same consciousness that God is using to produce and make this universe, world upon world. What's the matter? There's a separation, that's all. You feel separated from him. And I'll come to that in a moment. If you can do away with that separateness, then you'll be the same as his consciousness. Now, remember the illustration of the moving picture master used to always say, where the beam comes out from the projection booth and strikes the screen. And what happens? You get light and shadow, that's all. But when you look at it and apply your consciousness to it, it's alive, isn't it? It's real. Until you realize, oh, that's that light coming down. And in that light is the whole thing, which produces on the screen the light and shadow or the moving picture. So is this universe, projected from the booth of God's great light in eternity onto the screen of space, produces this seemingly hard and substantial earth and all that goes with it. It is nothing but the light of God projecting and causing light and shadow on the screen of space, to which, through delusion, these qualities are attributed, making it seem real and tangible. Remember, it is nothing but the consciousness of God moving as the form of light, projecting the light and shadow of this creation. In Revelation, the 4th chapter, it speaks about the lens which projects this cosmic dream. It will not say as clearly as I've said it, but if you read it, you'll find it there. It says, before the throne of God was a crystal clear. And so, and then I remember Master had a ecstasy one time, and in talking to Divine Mother, he said, now, he says, I see how you project it through the lens. And so, it doesn't seem possible, does it, as we're here enjoying this service, and you're hearing my voice, and that we're nothing but vibrating light of God being projected through the lens of eternity from the booth of eternity. But such it is. Now, as you wake up from your own dream, and then you understand your own dream, so when you wake up from the cosmic dream, by many years perhaps of soulful deep meditation, then you'll realize your oneness with God, then you'll wake up permanently from this cosmic dream, and there'll be no more delusion in your consciousness, and the separateness from God will be removed. The ego will be non-existent. The whole thing is ego consciousness. We must remove that. We must dissolve it. We must obliterate it, that the one consciousness of God be in and through us. Now science substantiates the dream nature of creation. That is the miracle of light. Light guided by the intelligence of God. It's not just light, but in that light is his intelligence. Just like in the light of your own consciousness is your intelligence which projects your dream. So, in God's great consciousness is his intelligence which through the light, the eternal light of God, projects this creation. Science substantiates that. Science says, that is, however solid this earth may appear to be, this physical world, it still operates under the laws of duality, and seemingly so. But when you investigate it, you will find it is not as solid as you think it is. Because through the electron microscope, even the heavy metals can be seen to be vibrating light atoms. And also matter is forever resolving. It is not stationary. It's changing. First into electromagnetic forces, as I have said, finally into light. Now these things have been shown. And you can, those of you who are science-minded, as many of us are at least space-minded nowadays, you can understand these things even from a theoretical standpoint. But through meditation you can realize them and understand them as that. And so matter is always becoming first energy, then light. Now science does it through mechanical means, proves these things. The yogis do it through meditation. You take the hydrogen atom, one atom, one molecule, hydrogen molecule, we have one photon and one electron. Proton and one electron. You annihilate it, what do you get? One photon. Nothing is lost. Energy is released. But in the end, that matter, which hydrogen is, becomes light. And so does it happen in this world. Everything resolves into light. That's why the world is not as it seems. And this cosmic dream is not as it seems. I have a quotation from one scientist, which is first one from the Master's book, speaking about the state of dreaming. At night, man enters the state of dream consciousness and escapes from the false, egotistic limitations that daily hem him in. In sleep, he has an ever-recurrent demonstration of the omnipotence of his mind, his consciousness. Lo, in the dream appear his long-dead friends, the remotest continents, the resurrected scenes of his childhood. We've all done that. That free and unconditioned state of consciousness, known to all men in the phenomena of dreams, is the permanent state of the mind of a God-tuned master. Now Eddington, great scientist, says this: forever solid matter melts into unsubstantial radiations. Forever tangible changes into the intangible. Perhaps radiation is matter moving with the speed of light, and matter is radiation moving with less speed than that of light. The free electrons of the scientists corresponds to the light beyond the atoms of the yogis. Master used to speak continually about the light beyond the atoms. So they are one and the same thing. Now as we see that matter is resolving into energy and finally into light, why can't God reverse the process and from light produce all this thing? That's just what he has done. And science has shown that too. They have shown that from light they can make the electromagnetic waves and finally the positrons, which is which constitutes the particles of matter. And so this has all been shown, known, and proved. Why not we prove it in our meditation, where we can see ourselves in consciousness as light? And one good thing, I don't think light can have any pains or aches or anything can happen to it. So that is the practical side. We must realize ourselves, not as this body. That's why we say all the time, I'm not the body. If you keep saying, I am the body, you'll never get out of it. But if you keep saying, I am not this body, and meditate, and finally you'll realize that that is so, and you are not the body. You are the light which has produced this body. And in that light is God's intelligence and consciousness, which you are and which I am. That's what we must learn. And so many practical benefits can come if we realize through meditation, first through theory, then meditation, that this universe is not as it seems, but is vibrating light. Then through meditation we can realize He who has made this universe. We can realize the one eternal Spirit, the framer, the sole operator of this cosmic dream, and that we are one with Him. Now that's the lesson we have to learn from this morning. Not about God's manifestations all the time. We can never know Him unless we get behind the manifestations, know the light which has produced them, know the sole framer of this universe, and realize we are one with Him. That can be done, and it can be done through right and proper meditation. And so the practical application of this subject this morning should be that we should not take our worldly experiences too seriously. We cannot do it. Because when we put emphasis on the body, on our personality, on the possessions we have, what happens? We augment the ego principle. Understand that. And when you augment the ego principle, you sink deeper and deeper into delusion of separateness from God. It is the ego that makes us feel separate from God. Understand that. And by dwelling on this dream consciousness, taking it too seriously, then we feel ourselves so-and-so, and we swell up big, the personality, and we have so many houses and automobiles and all sorts of things, and really we haven't got that at all. We've got one thing, and that's the presence of God. We have to realize that. These other things, remember, augment the ego principle, and that's the dangerous thing. A person with a big ego is very hard to handle, not only in ways of the world, but in ways of God. He cannot approach God with that big ego. And so, from the autobiography, these few words will perhaps help you to understand this ego principle better. Ego principle, or ankara, is the root cause of dualism, or the seeming separation between God and His Creator. Now, if you don't feel the presence of God, realize it's because you have not eradicated the ego. Then it goes on. This ego principle brings human beings under the sway of Maya or cosmic delusion, by which the subject ego falsely appears as the object. The creatures imagine themselves to be creators. You see the difference? Instead of realizing God is the creator, and we are a part of Him, we become the subject. And as such, we think we do things, and really we do nothing. God is the doer. And so this ego principle is very dangerous. We should do away with it. Because why? It prevents us from realizing our oneness with God. We feel more and more and more separated from Him. We do not want that. We cannot tolerate that, because we are rays of His great consciousness and light. And so the only reality is in God, in realizing our oneness with Him. That's the only reality. Those of you who have investigated a little bit will find that out. And you're sick and tired of trying to find reality in this outward consciousness. It doesn't exist there. The only reality is in God and our oneness with Him. Now our master, our founder, has pointed this out most wonderfully in a letter which he wrote to me. And I value this letter perhaps as the greatest letter he has ever written to me, because the truth which he has pointed out in this letter aroused me so that I made the effort to rise above this outward consciousness and delusion and know that I was not that, but that I was one with the eternal Father, as each and every one of us is. This letter written to me does not apply only to me, it applies to each and every one of us. Let us read it. This was written in November 23rd, 1923, long time ago. But I have found throughout the years that these words which he has written have not changed. They have become more real to me. I have tried to find flaws in his writings. I have been unable to do that, and that's why I give them to you, for no other reason. This is what he says. This is part of his letter. This applies to every one of us. Be not afraid, child of eternal lightning. Each one of us is not this body. We are a ray of the eternal lightning of God's presence, his great light. So he says, be not afraid, child of eternal lightning. March on with unperturbed, steady steps, elbowing through a million darknesses. Why, what is the body? What is this passing show? They are gone. But the candles that you are lighting and burning in your Father's house will show you your path here and hereafter. Can there be any greater words than those? Don't get discouraged. Keep on meditating. And the candles that you are lighting in the eternal light of God will be there, always to guide you until finally you are one with the great light of the infinite Father. Such are the words of the Master. They are worth listening to and following. And yet, realizing the dream nature of this existence does not mean that we should lose interest in life. That's the danger which I find in people. They begin to think, oh, what's the use? It's a dream, well, what of it? No. If you do not lose interest in life because you have found that which has given life and is behind all life, then whether the dream is good or bad, it's fine. It makes no difference. Whether the dream is tragedy or comedy makes no difference. But you have to know and realize the one Father behind it. And so if you can do that, then any aspect of the dream is fine. Because you know it's not real, but that which you feel behind the dream and in throughout your soul, that is real. That makes any aspect of the dream good. Understand that. Then the troubles cannot shake you. The troubles will not bother you. And in God's great presence, we find freedom. And this will come by your faithful study of self-realization principles, because they are based on truth, and that must be followed up after you have a theoretical knowledge by what? By regular meditation, deep devotion, so that you realize these things. That's all. And then life will take on a true meaning. It will not be something wasted or something good for nothing. It will be something real and tangible because you have taken God with you. And so finally, we should give goodwill to all as we pass through this cosmic dream. We cannot become lackadaisical or indifferent. We must give goodwill to all. Why? Because each one of us is a ray of God. In each one of us is God's love and his great consciousness. How can we give anything but goodwill to one another if we feel that in one another? It's impossible. And so as we pass through life, let us realize this one thing. But while we are doing this, there's one thing we have to be careful about, and that is to never lose our calmness. Never lose your calmness. Master said the saints never lose their calmness. And so we must never lose our calmness by being thoroughly anchored in God. Then we are safe. Then nothing can disturb us. When we realize the unity of God's presence behind this cosmic dream, no incident in this dream can touch us. As Master used to say, we can stand unshaken through the crash of breaking worlds. Surely we can, if we feel the presence of God with us. And so we have to realize that we are not this body, but the eternal spirit behind the body. That's the only way out. Otherwise, this world and its paradoxes and injustices will engulf us with trouble and sorrow. But when we realize we are not the body, but the underlying eternal spirit, which is reality, then nothing can touch us. And I want to close with Master's words from his little book, The Master Said, which I'm sure you will enjoy. To state that the world is a dream, Master says, without trying to attain in meditation actual realization of the truth, may lead one to fanaticism, which is true. You cannot say this world is a dream and then go through a harrowing experience. You feel it, unless you know the underlying reality behind the dream. Then you are not a fanatic, then you're wise. And he goes on to say, the wise man understands that even though mortal life is a dream, it contains dream pains, and I'll say it does. He adopts scientific methods to awaken from the dream. That's the point we do not do. We do not try to awaken from this dream in the omnipresence of God. If we'll do that, then we'll realize the underlying truth. And in 1 Timothy, the 6th verse, 6th chapter, 16th verse, this is what I'll close with, which depicts fully the underlying reality behind this cosmic dream. One whose consciousness, or one, the consciousness of whom only hath immortality, dwelling in the light, which no man can approach unto, which no man has seen nor can see. There's only one place where there's freedom and immortality, and that is in the light of the infinite. But that light cannot be approached with worldly eyes. It cannot be seen by the eyes of man, but it can be easily seen by the eyes of the love and intuition of the soul. Each one of us is a ray of God, a soul. Through that power, we can easily see this eternal light, which is the underlying reality, and which cannot be sick or sinful, cannot be disturbed, because it is the light of the infinite Father.